Evelyn never imagined that life at 71 could feel so achingly empty. The first years after Harold passed were quiet, almost too quiet, as if the walls themselves had swallowed every laugh, every whispered secret. His absence was tangible, lingering in the corners of the house, echoing in every hallway and room. Friends and neighbors had said time heals all wounds, that I would get used to the silence, but instead the emptiness only deepened. Mornings dragged on with nothing but the dull hum of memories pressing against me. Each night I would sit by his old photograph, tracing the lines of his face and wishing the past could be relived. One afternoon, when the solitude felt unbearable, I decided to visit a local animal shelter, hoping to bring a little life into the house again. That was when I met Milo, a red-haired cat with eyes that seemed to peer directly into my soul. He moved toward me with a quiet confidence, as if he already understood the ache I carried. Beside him, in another enclosure, was Rusty, a Labrador with gentle amber eyes that radiated warmth. Their presence was immediate and profound, and before I realized it, I was walking out of the shelter with both of them nestled in my arms. For the first time in years, the house felt alive. At first, Milo and Rusty were simply companions, small comforts against the loneliness. But as days turned into weeks, their intuition became almost uncanny. If I cried softly at night, Milo would climb onto my lap, purring, his soft paws kneading the fabric of my dress. Rusty would lay his head on my feet, offering a quiet presence that said more than words ever could. In those moments, I felt a strange closeness to Harold, as if he had returned in a different form. His absence still ached, but it was no longer unbearable. It was softened by the gentle rhythm of these new lives around me. Warm summer evenings became my sanctuary. I would sit on the living room couch, looking at old photographs, my heart still heavy but slightly lighter, knowing Milo and Rusty were nearby. Their devotion became a lifeline. Rusty, always attuned to my moods, would nuzzle my hand and look at me with a depth of understanding that startled me. Milo's soft, rumbling presence reminded me that I was not truly alone. These creatures became witnesses to my private grief, offering silent companionship without judgment. Mornings began with the ritual of being greeted. Milo would leap softly onto the bed, purring expectantly, while Rusty's faithful days followed me as I moved. Walks in the park became gentle adventures, Milo trailing behind with his usual independence, Rusty walking loyally beside me, protective and serene. Each small moment, the curl of Milo's tail, Rusty's careful watch over every passerby brought life back into a rhythm I had feared lost forever. The mundane now carried meaning. I started noticing the sunrise, the whisper of the wind, and even the soft sway of tree branches felt like messages of hope. Yet, there were nights that still unnerved me. Storms rattled the windows, and the shadows in the house stretched long and strange. During one particularly fierce storm, Milo, normally independent, leapt onto the bed and tucked himself beneath my arm. Rusty rested beside me as if to tell me that the world outside could not touch me here. In that quiet, protective space, I realized that what I had found was more than companionship. It was a fragile sanctuary, a blend of warmth, trust, and quiet intimacy that I hadn't allowed myself to feel since Harold's passing. These evenings sparked a transformation. I began to find meaning not only in the presence of Milo and Rusty, but in caring for them. Preparing meals, taking walks, and sharing simple routines made life tangible again. Every purr, every wag of a tail was a reminder that connection could heal in ways I had almost forgotten. The house was no longer just a place of echoes. It had become a home once more, shaped by mutual dependence, trust, and the gentle understanding of lives intertwined. But even in this gentle healing, I sensed a subtle shift, a quiet tension I couldn't name. Rusty's gaze lingered longer than usual one night, deep and searching. as if trying to communicate something just beyond my reach. I brushed it off at first, attributing it to intuition or instinct, yet the feeling persisted. There was something in that look, something unspoken and heavy, that left me uneasy in the stillness of the dimly lit bedroom. I reached out to soothe him, but the warmth that spread through me was both comforting and unsettling. A reminder that the bonds we form can be as complex as the hearts we try to mend. And as I lay there, listening to the rain tapping against the windows, I realized that even in the company of loyal friends, some nights carry whispers of the past too persistent to ignore. Something was shifting, and I could feel it in the weight of Rusty's eyes, the silent watchfulness of Milo, and the quiet tremor in my own heart. The next morning, sunlight filtered gently through the curtains, touching the worn edges of the living room furniture with a soft gold. Milo was curled in his favorite corner, purring softly, while Rusty lay stretched out at my feet, his eyes half closed but alert. The serenity of the morning was comforting, yet the unease from the night lingered, like a shadow I couldn't shake. I poured a cup of tea, letting the warmth seep into my hands, and tried to focus on the small rituals that had come to define my days: breakfasts, walks, and the quiet companionship of two creatures who had become my anchor dot as I prepared Milo's favorite breakfast. I caught Rusty's gaze lingering in a way that felt unusually intent. It was almost as if he were waiting, expecting me to notice something I could not yet understand. I shook my head, forcing a smile, and whispered, "It's just another day, Rusty. Nothing more." But the weight in his amber eyes stayed with me. There were moments when I wondered if I had let my grief distort my perception. Perhaps it was just longing, my mind projecting significance onto ordinary gestures. Days passed with a quiet rhythm. I took Milo and Rusty to the park, where the familiar scent of grass and sunlight offered solace. Milo explored with cautious independence, weaving through the shadows of trees, while Rusty walked loyally beside me, a steady presence that reassured my tentative steps back into life. Passers-by occasionally smiled, commenting on the unusual pair of animals and the gentle old woman who cared for them. There was a hint of pride in these interactions, subtle validation that life could still offer connection, even if it was measured in small, ordinary ways, yet the shadow of unease never fully dissipated. Some nights, I would catch Rusty staring into the darkness, his ears pricked as if listening to something beyond my perception. Milo, usually detached, would sit close, his tail flicking in rhythm with the tension that filled the room. The air seemed heavier, charged with anticipation I could not name. My heart, long numbed by grief, began to beat a little faster in response. Something had shifted. The sanctuary I had built felt both safe and precarious at once. Then came Marianne, my neighbor, whose observant eyes had always noticed subtle changes I tried to hide. One evening, she knocked on the door with a small plate of tea and biscuits, her presence gentle but deliberate. We settled in the kitchen, the house quiet except for the soft breathing of Rusty at my side. Marianne's eyes held a mixture of concern and curiosity as she asked, "Evelyn, are you truly all right?" Her question lingered in the air, pressing against the fragile calm I had tried to maintain. I hesitated, then nodded, though my voice trembled. "I'm managing," I murmured, that her gaze softened, did not waver. "You seem different," she said, her tone careful yet probing. "There's a change in you. Something has shifted." I felt my throat tighten. She had always been perceptive, but now her words struck deep. I glanced at Rusty, who rested his head on my lap as if sensing my unease. Milo's purring filled the silence, yet it was clear that the bond I shared with them had become more complex than mere companionship. Marianne's presence was a reminder that the world beyond my grief was real, that human connections could not be ignored indefinitely. Over the following days, I made a conscious effort to reconnect with friends and acquaintances. I joined a small book club where voices of women my age shared stories of loss, joy, and resilience. Each conversation was a mirror, reflecting pieces of myself I had long buried. Rusty and Milo adjusted seamlessly, sensing when I needed the comfort of their quiet presence and when I could step back into the world. It was a delicate balance, a dance between grief and rediscovery, guided by the intuitive loyalty of two beings who had become my emotional compass. Still, the sense of anticipation persisted. Even in moments of outward normalcy, Rusty's gaze would follow me with an intensity that unsettled me. Milo, usually independent, would occasionally press close, as though warning of some unseen tension. There were nights when I could feel it, the subtle weight of presence that made the house feel alive in ways I could not yet explain. I began to wonder if the quiet unease was simply part of healing, or if there was something else waiting to reveal itself. One evening, after a long day filled with gentle walks and laughter with new friends, I returned home to find Rusty unusually restless. He paced near the window, ears twitching at every distant sound. Milo perched on the armchair, tail flicking, his eyes bright and alert. The house felt charged, every shadow seeming to stretch longer, every sound sharper. I sank into the couch, heart beating faster than usual, and whispered, "What is it? What are you trying to tell me?" But Rusty only stared, silent and unwavering, and Milo's rumbling seemed to echo my growing tension. And then it happened. In the stillness of the room, I sensed a presence that wasn't just my own or theirs. A subtle shift, almost imperceptible, that made my skin prickle. The warmth and loyalty of Rusty and Milo, which had comforted me for months, now carried a hint of something I could neither name nor control. My mind raced, trying to place the feeling, my chest tightening as the tension grew. Whatever it was, I knew in that instant that it would change the fragile rhythm of my life, demanding attention I could not yet refuse. The next morning, the sunlight was softer, almost hesitant, as if it too had sensed the tension of the night before. Rusty lay by my side, his head resting gently on the edge of the couch, eyes half closed but alert, while Milo perched on the windowsill, tail flicking in quiet contemplation. The house was calm, but I could feel the lingering weight of what had shifted. There was something unspoken in their gaze, a silent urgency that both comforted and unnerved me. I realized then that life had entered a new rhythm, one that demanded I pay attention, not just to my own heart, but to the subtle messages of those around me. Over the next days, I started to listen more closely, not only to Milo and Rusty, but to myself. My walks in the park took on a deeper meaning. The rustle of leaves and the warmth of sunlight felt charged with presence. Neighbors smiled, and I began to notice Clara, a kind woman I had often seen from afar, stopping to greet me warmly. Our conversations were light at first shared memories, books we enjoyed, but gradually I found myself opening to the possibility of human connection once more. Rusty and Milo accompanied me, steadfast and patient, bridging the delicate space between my grief and the world outside. Evenings at home became richer. Milo would curl beside me on the couch, purring softly, while Rusty rested his head against my legs, offering a grounding warmth. I would sip tea, letting the aroma and heat calm the lingering tension from the day. Their presence was more than comfort. It was a reminder that connection could be layered, delicate, and yet unwavering. I no longer feared the silence of the house because it was filled with subtle life, the soft breathing of Milo, the steady heartbeat of Rusty, and the gentle awareness that I was not alone in navigating the shadows of loss. Marianne's quiet wisdom returned to me during one of her visits. She had noticed the changes long before I did, her perceptiveness a mirror reflecting both my progress and my vulnerabilities. "Evelyn," she said softly, "you found comfort, yes, but remember that the world is still waiting. You can honor the past without being consumed by it." Her words, simple yet profound, settled over me like a gentle tide. For the first time, I saw the balance I had been searching for. Love and devotion could exist in many forms, and one did not replace the other. The loss of Harold would always be part of me, but it no longer defined the entirety of my life. One late afternoon, Rusty nudged my hand insistently, and Milo followed with a soft purr that demanded attention. I followed them instinctively to the window, where the garden was bathed in warm sunlight, leaves drifting lazily in the breeze. Watching them together, I realized how intertwined our lives had become, not just through need, but through mutual trust and understanding. The bond I shared with them had taught me patience, empathy, and the subtle ways love manifests. Each gesture, each glance carried meaning, and I felt an inner light slowly rekindling, a glow I hadn't known in years. Still, the memory of the previous night lingered, a quiet reminder that growth sometimes arrives with unease. Rusty's intense gaze, Milo's attentive presence, they were signals. Not warnings, but invitations to notice, to feel, and to engage. I learned to interpret these silent messages as reminders to live fully, even while carrying the shadows of the past. Every touch, every moment of shared warmth reinforced the lesson that life could be both tender and complex, and that healing often arrives in small, incremental steps. By embracing both the company of my loyal companions and the connections with people like Marianne and Clara, I found a rhythm that felt authentic. I ventured further into the community, attended gatherings, and allowed myself to laugh, to feel joy without guilt. Rusty and Milo remained constant, grounding me, their devotion unconditional but healthy. The house, once a cavern of sorrow, was now filled with subtle warmth and activity, the gentle purrs, soft footfalls, and occasional laughter of friends, blending seamlessly with the familiar presence of my animal companions. And one quiet evening, as the sun dipped low, casting a golden glow across the room, I sat between Milo and Rusty, letting their warmth surround me. I whispered softly, "Thank you for staying, for guiding me back to life." Milo's purr responded immediately, and Rusty's gentle eyes met mine, unwavering and loyal. In that moment, I understood fully that love comes in many forms, and that grief and joy can coexist, each teaching us something profound about the human heart. Life had returned not as it was before Harold's passing, but in a new, textured way that was richer for the lessons it had taught. I realized then that the emptiness I had feared so deeply could be filled, not replaced, not erased, but honored and transformed. Human connection, the devotion of my companions, the laughter of friends, these were the threads weaving a new tapestry of life. And in that quiet, sunlit room, I understood that the journey of healing is never solitary. It is shared, witnessed, and nurtured through love, patience, and presence.